Life was already a tragedy. Joey was poor and a virgin, and earned such a bad salary that even alms seemed like a bonus. The only thing he carried besides debts was a monster on his back. But don't worry, it could get worse, and it did get worse. Wow, how it got worse. After being betrayed, he is shot and almost served as lunch. Joe wakes up and bingo. It was all weird, full of extra legs and a pair of antennas. Yes, he turned into a cockroach, and to make matters worse, the cockroach god found him disrespectful and immediately cut his system out. And the bottom of the well serves a feast. Now powerless, hopeless, and surrounded by cockroaches, who find poop a beautiful fine delicacy. Joey needs to decide to accept the new situation or try to find a way around it. This is the first isekai that proves that yes, you can be reincarnated into something much worse than a slime. Joey was there in a cold sweat, dragging a piece of animal carcass on his back. It was tremendously heavy. Everyone back there was also in the same boat, carrying a piece of monster everywhere. The sun was almost setting, leaving everything a little red. In the middle of the street, a giant monster stretched out with scary teeth and bizarre insect eyes, I believe. From above, a guy was shouting and shouting for no one to stop, otherwise everyone would sleep with empty bellies. How cool, bro. Everyone was moving the carcasses, some already falling over from exhaustion. It was a heavy job, you see. The guy up there in modern slavery style didn't even let anyone breathe. "Drag it until it falls hard," he shouted. One of the guys, almost without strength, tried to get up and apologize. Poor guy, brother. Joey was all bent over, almost kissing the ground with so much weight. You could see him struggling not to collapse, but he couldn't take it anymore, and he screamed from the bottom of his throat. It was so painful that he felt so much pain. A strong guy arrived, calling Joey useless and telling him to stop messing around. What an annoying guy. Joey, biting his lip, held firm and continued at the stop. In his eyes, you could see the strength of will and sadness mixed together. A total bad vibe. His name was Joe. He's just another nobody trying to survive in that hell in the year 2026. The city, seen from afar, seemed calm. Tall buildings, blue sky. It seemed like normal life, but suddenly, the calm went to hell. The city was attacked by some bizarre monsters. No one knew where they came from. Some giant worms, other tremendously strange creatures, destroying everything and causing the greatest chaos. We had to face a lot of monsters, and the earth became like a giant dungeon of horror, and they called all this chaos an abyss. Perhaps a very appropriate name, right? That dungeon released a tremendously crazy type of radiation, which gave some people superpowers. Those are the awakened ones, and whoever gained these powers became some of the toughest guys around. Since he had no such luck, he became a slave to survive. How unfair. There goes Hoei and everyone else dragging giant pieces and animal shells everywhere, and the guy was just shouting, indicating where to put all that junk. Everyone almost out of breath carrying the monster's carcass into a truck. It was the last straw. Again, some shouts telling people to push. It looked like they were whipping everyone there. All that was missing was the whip. Joey and another person fell to their knees, breathless, in front of the truck. How tiring. Before he could breathe, a guy with a grim face slapped Joey in the face extremely aggressively. The guy started shouting, accusing Joey of acting like a poor guy, and Joey lowered his head, held his face without saying anything. Then he raised his head with a little smile on his face. How audacious, my brother, and asked the guy if his arm wasn't hurting from hitting him so much. The guy looked at him the wrong way and told him to get back to work, otherwise it would leak out. Joey now gritted his teeth and agreed instantly. There wasn't much choice for him to make, right? The guy ordered the carcasses to be delivered before dark, otherwise no one would eat them. A legitimate blackmail, working so hard while still having an empty stomach, but Joey just said he would get the job done. Suddenly, a piece of carcass started to shake and everyone started to panic. Joey, looking like he had seen everything, looked at the ground shaking and thought it could be an earthquake. Out of nowhere, a giant monster with a huge mouth came out of the ground, ready to swallow him whole. Joe's eyes widened with terror. It was the end of the line. The guy, seeing the scene, was shocked to realize that one of the monsters was still alive. Everyone started running, screaming in fear as the animal attacked. Joey ran as fast as he could, but the guy, not wanting to let him escape, followed. Out of nowhere, the guy pulled out a gun and fired an extremely powerful shot, with a huge bang. Joey was shot in the leg and flew forward with blood gushing out. Poor guy, bro. He was now panting, with a face of pain, and his bone was tremendously deformed with fear. Thinking he was going to die, he just turned his head to see who was speaking. The guy pointed the gun at him with an evil psychopathic smile, taking advantage of the moment to send him into the ditch. Joey fell to the ground with his leg bleeding. The guy started laughing, enjoying the whole situation. He spoke with the greatest contempt that people like Joey deserved to die. They were just going to the ditch. Joey, lying on the ground, realized that that guy used him as bait so everyone could escape. He couldn't believe it, thinking why it was so difficult to survive. He started to think that a weak and talentless guy in the world was going to be discarded sooner or later, but he preferred it to be later, right? His eyes filled with tears. Poor thing. And he saw a cockroach walking near him. He even felt envious of the cockroach and bitterly realized that even insects adapted better than him in that world. At the last second, a monster with a giant mouth appeared in front of him, and he thought that in the next life, he didn't want to be born so weak. And at the last moment, before he died, he thought if he turned into a cockroach, his life would be much easier. Suddenly, an unknown body modification system appeared, but the first attempts at reconstruction failed. After millions of attempts, the system finally announced that the reconstruction had worked. Powder, a strange noise in the dark alley, creating a sinister atmosphere. Joey woke up confused, wondering if he had died. He tried to raise his arm, but realized with horror that his limbs were no longer human. Damn. He saw a mirror and went to look at himself. Chipped! His wish had come true. A cockroach appeared in the reflection. He opened his eyes wide, shocked, and little by little he began to understand what had happened. To your delight, my dears, he had turned into a cockroach. His own reflection scared him. He started to panic, screaming in disbelief at what was happening. He screamed, "Mom, I've turned into a real cockroach." Oh my God, what a pity. The guy was tremendously surprised to see that he had an extra pair of arms, but moving them didn't bother him. On the contrary, it's as if he had had them there all his life. He realized that the only thing that bothered him were the new muscles in his back, which he was not yet very used to. Before understanding the whole situation, he began to fall, screaming and trying to catch himself. Falling, he realized that the wings would move if he controlled his back muscles, but he still didn't know how to control that. Tremendously angry, he began shouting that if he had known that his last wish would come true, he would have asked for something else. Maybe he would become the Hulk, right? And suddenly, a glowing silhouette appeared in front of him, calling him a clueless human being and scolding him for mocking the feelings of the cockroach gods. The creature continued saying that, in the last 5,000 years, he was the first person to ask the cockroach god for strength, but now he was disappointed with his attitude. Joey caught on immediately, and was surprised to see that the comics weren't lying. He was now in an isekai. Now all emotional, he completely changed his stance and called that brilliant creature his brother of the system, and even his father, apologizing for his words. But the cockroach god didn't care about the pleas and disappeared, leaving the hero alone with a new body. A message appeared on the system screen. System temporarily down. You are hated by the cockroach god. The guy was in complete shock. He had really messed up with God Cockroach, and now he had no system. It chipped. It got a system. It ran out of system quickly. He spent several days trying to access his system, but nothing. He shouted, "System," but no one responded. Despite several attempts, the system showed no sign of life. He began to realize that the situation was getting worse and worse, until he realized that he now understood the cockroach's language. He began to hear other cockroaches whispering, not knowing what to make of him. One night, I was thinking about my new life. Even though I wanted to turn into a cockroach, I couldn't get rid of the feeling that it was disgusting. Soon he saw other cockroaches gathering and eating something that looked really tasty. He looked disgusted and realized it was his own poop. Damn. One of the cockroaches said happily that the poop had to be consumed warm and called him to participate in the shit feast. He was tremendously terrified and disgusted and shouted at them to stay away from him, that he didn't want to participate in any of this at all. But the cockroach didn't give up. He picked up a piece of shit and handed it to him, but Joey threw it away in panic and repeated again that he didn't want it. The cockroach tried to justify himself to his cockroach friends, but what did he say? That he had been shot in the heart, but the guy didn't care about those excuses. He started screaming that that other cockroach had shitty breath. He told her to shut up and not say anything else. Little by little, he realized that human genes had made him stronger, but at the same time, he was scared by his new tastes. She began to like the smell of dirt and began to realize that if she didn't eat normal food, one day she would wake up with her face buried in a pile of trash. Looking at the dump pile of garbage bags, he remembered that the thick, black plastic bags hindered the cockroach's receptors, but the human mind said that there had to be something edible there. He then started looking for food, found a sealed package of egg yolk pie, and in fact, that thing had been expired for 3 years. Still, he thought he had gotten lucky. The system reported that that pie had 385 calories and was still edible, but the first instinct that stood out was the human one. A tremendous horror. Ew. How disgusting. 3 years past due. How could he eat that? But hunger was greater than any disgust. Despite its disgusting appearance, the pie had a very good smell, a rotten smell precisely, which cockroaches love. Joey decided it was a cheap delicacy. As he ate the pieces of spoiled food, he was tremendously happy with that transformation. 10 days later, he was sitting with another cockroach, thinking about his beautiful new life. The cockroach god never appeared again, and he realized that the dream had been a mistake. Life wasn't as easy as he thought, and it wasn't for a human. Joey even thought about putting an end to it, but no matter what he did, he couldn't. After all, everyone knows that poison, water, and falls don't do anything to him. Cockroaches are extremely resilient, so he decided to look for a natural enemy of cockroaches to eat. But he remembered the giant monster that had eaten him, and he was scared to even think about it, and decided to stay alive anyway. Cockroaches are social insects. If he manages to command a colony and become king of the cockroaches, his chance of survival will increase a lot. Just imagine the guy becoming the king of cockroaches. Joey no longer cared about having lost his connection with the cockroach god, because, with the knowledge of past human life, he would be able to live happily, without a doubt. He started praising his neighbor, saying that he had a very beautiful skeleton, and even said that he wanted to be friends with him, but the fat man immediately rejected his friendship with that guy. That little cockroach didn't like eating poop, and poop was very tasty, so they couldn't be friends. At that moment, the guy rang. It doesn't matter how good life is for him. Now his passion was to boss the cockroaches. This guy was extremely ambitious, right? These insects saw Joey living happily without worrying about anything, so he decided to show that he also had power. And that was how he completed 20 days of his new rebirth as the cockroach, destined to command the entire cockroach colony there. The chance really came. The older cockroaches called everyone to a meeting, saying they were going to move to another area where there was plenty of food. Those older adult cockroaches let everyone choose. Either they stayed there and became the enemy's range, or they went with them and remained in protection. The fat cockroach heard this and said he couldn't eat shit anymore. But hadn't she just said that shit was delicious? Joey heard the outburst and thought that the fat cockroach was the worst he had ever seen train, because he didn't even rummage through the trash looking for food. He just waited for the next batch of shit. A terrible, lazy person, huh? The fat man was crying, scared to death of leaving. That really irritated Joey. He thought cockroaches were domestic animals because they were scared of new places, huh? Anyway, those adult cockroaches needed a volunteer to explore the path, but no one opened their mouths. A total silence. Joey then decided to help everyone after all. Weren't he eating their shit? And to his surprise, the cockroach god appeared again to make contact, saying that if Joe accepted the mission, the cockroach god would think about forgiving him. At the time, Joey raised his hand decisively and said he was going to lead everyone. Tremendously courageous. Or maybe desperate for sure. The fat cockroach was impressed with Joey, calling him very macho, muscular, and Joey was happy because his cheat code was back. Yeah, your little system. Soon, Joey and the fat guys were in the new place. Joey now understood that that mission, in fact, was to cross the fence. Everything was tremendously calm, so it was easy for Joey to pass. But the fat cockroach said he didn't know anything. He then discovered that when the food ran out, the adult cockroaches sent the new ones to search and explore a new area. But the world was full of natural enemies, so the reconnaissance squad's chance of survival was almost zero. They could become enemy food at any time, while adult cockroaches are fine, huh? He was scared, because it was a legitimate collective suicide. He even thought that the cockroach god had done that on purpose to get revenge when he died. So one guy said that they had to get out of there, because he would find a way to feed everyone later. The fat cockroach started crying again. The guy is always crying. And suddenly, that adult cockroach appeared behind Joey. He didn't understand where they wanted to go, because there were a lot of dead monsters to eat behind the fence. Whoever arrived first would help themselves to the beautiful banquet. Joey, tremendously shocked. Could it be that cockroaches had evolved so much that they now ate alien monsters? It was a miracle for the guy, because he would never go hungry. Anyway, he said he had to solve it somehow and he didn't want to go on a diet. Then they could do without it and start eating. At that moment, The adult cockroach caught Joe as if he were a small insect. Apparently, he is being kidnapped. Oh, yeah? The adult cockroach said that if he didn't explore the path, he would become cockroach dinner. Joey gritted his teeth, thinking that even after being reborn, he couldn't escape the law of the jungle. There was always someone shouting and telling him to do something. And he remembered his previous life. After all, those there were weak and without support, and were sent to look for food for the strong, and they were just idiots wanting to die. The commander thought that going out to look for food was a reward on the path to survival. The adult cockroach said the same thing, saying that they should be grateful because he was giving them a chance to survive. And he threw Joe to the ground. Soon, the adult cockroach landed on Joey's face, while Joey began to be attacked by the cockroach. But he connected when he had to use the system. If it wasn't enough to turn into a cockroach and eat everything, it wasn't enough to survive in the apocalypse. Joey decided he was going to get stronger, and soon a group of cockroaches began to explore. Joey told the cockroach brothers to keep an eye out and move on. If an enemy appeared, they were to notify them immediately. Joey didn't like having some fat people so close, but he understood. Even cockroaches get scared, bro. The boy looked ahead and thought the fence looked tremendously strained. There is no river there. So why are there rocks against the waves, huh? He began to observe the larvae. One of the adult cockroaches offered to go after them, as there was no danger. The cockroach agreed. After all, he couldn't let those worms get all the food first. The adult cockroaches went straight to the top. If an enemy appeared, it would eat the larvae first. Joey was tremendously indignant. After all, adult cockroaches could fly and were prohibiting him from exploring. He just called that bunch of lazy, useless people. And suddenly, something caught that guy's attention, and he turned around and saw a huge red sauce in front of him, and he was tremendously horrified, very scared. Now Joey realized that those stones weren't stones, but were damn frogs. A tremendous trap for them. Are you crazy? They were camouflaged, looking like rocks to make the victim fall into the trap. While the fat man was crying in despair, the frog had already attacked with his tongue. Joey told everyone to run as fast as possible, but the frogs were faster, and several cockroaches died a perhaps heroic death. The system warned Joe that there was an enemy nearby, and it was a mutant frog. These frogs were stronger than normal frogs, but they had a weakness. They couldn't see stationary prey. The fat man screamed in fear, but Joe told him not to move. After all, frogs don't see stationary things. Meanwhile, God Cockroach wanted to give Joey a choice. On the one hand, it would show a safe route for him to escape from there. On the other hand, he had to save another cockroach and accept the first loyal subject on the path to becoming the God King Cockroach. Joey didn't understand anything that God Cockroach was saying. How could someone become king of the cockroaches without dying, huh? Suddenly, the guy turned around and looked at the fat man. Joey remembered at the time of the betrayal, when he expected someone to come back and help him, poor thing. Meanwhile, the cockroach god was counting down. Joey took the fat cockroach by the hand and flew with it, trying hard, but he remembered that he wanted someone to save him like he did now. Speaking of which, that guy really needed to go on a diet, because this is the first time I've seen a fat cockroach. The fat man now started to praise the cockroach, saying he loved it. But Joe told him to shut up because his breath smelled like shit. That shitty breath. But what is that? A giant frog opened its mouth to swallow the couple of cockroaches. And now it's time for the turning point. Joey threw the fat man forward, sacrificing himself. Damn. The last thing the fat man saw was his cockroach brother Joe in that naughty frog's mouth. One bite, and wow, that's it. Joey passed the cockroach god test. That touched the god of cockroaches, and now Joey had a system available, and I heard an amen. Then the ability to absorb all things was activated. Joey began to gain new abilities. Sticky tongue, acidic mutant frog slime. Damn, how disgusting. Meanwhile, the mutant frog's head exploded, spraying green blood everywhere. For dessert, Joey won an extremely special prize. Yes, he had a body transformation. Now, he wasn't just any cockroach. It was a party for cockroaches. Joey left the mutant body shouting happily that he had returned. The cockroach god was tremendously impressed that Joe had kept his kindness in his heart in a completely difficult situation. Now he was worthy of becoming his follower. Joe didn't understand anything. Did I really have to become a cockroach again? The god of cockroaches explained that cockroaches are cockroaches, like immortals. Since Joe was immortal, why worry about appearance, huh? And Joey wasn't very good at history or interpretation at school. He asked God to speak in an easier way, more clearly, because he didn't understand anything. The cockroach god, tremendously angry, began to explain that Joe now had the power of immortality, even in his human form. Joe now became extremely excited. Luck was finally smiling on him as he saw that he didn't need to become a cockroach again. Meanwhile, the cockroach god was relieved because Joe had not abandoned his neighbor, even though he knew he was an insect. Suddenly, Joe felt something when he stepped on the ground. It was the fat cockroach under his foot. Damn! And he was in critical condition. The cockroach god didn't like it at all. He had crushed the friend he had just saved. Joe now realized that he had become human again since he saved the fat man. Will he turn into a cockroach again now that he killed the fat cockroach? While Joe had the god of cockroaches on his back, the guy thought that his life would depend on his acting skills. The moment God Cockroach wanted to do something to Joe, he started crying. He cried because God had let him live. Joe lifted that fat man with all his heart, and now he was sprawled, crushed on the ground. So may fate take him along, because he couldn't live without his brother, Fat Cockroach. God thought the two had a strong bond. Then he said that the fat man wasn't dead, and asked Joe not to cry. It turns out that the fat man is not dead, and will never die, because he is the protector. As long as Joe is alive, the fat man can be resurrected. God explained that Joe needed to kill mutant monsters to gather energy and resurrect him again. Right away, Joey realized that the world was small, and that those frogs weren't going to escape it. The guy turned into a titan, like one of those giants from Attack on Titan, and said he was going to make those frogs remember that day forever. After all, he knows that frogs are tremendously afraid of humans. But suddenly, a frog started jumping on Joe's body. The next moment, the frog hit him hard in the face. But Joe grabbed the frog right away and started crushing it in his hand. Since he didn't have the strength to face the giant, the cockroach god warned the guy not to touch the mutant frogs. That frog slime was eating away at his flesh. While Joe fought with the frogs and punched others several times, one of the frogs looked at Joe. Right in front of him, there was apparently an earthworm, only a hairy one. What could that be? But suddenly, by instinct, he opened his mouth to take a bite of that worm, and then he hugged all of Joe's worm. A tremendous blow to the show. Joe screamed in pain. Are you crazy? Apparently, that wasn't an earthworm, but another type of earthworm. He held the worm with one hand and held the frog with the other. Still shaking from the pain, he squeezed the frog very tightly. Damn, what a scene. You're crazy. And he now, with his corroded hands, turned to the god of cockroaches and said he couldn't deal with those mutant frogs. But the cockroach god immediately called him an idiot because he was fighting without using his skills. What an idiot. Now Joe asked himself, powers? What powers are we talking about? Joe didn't understand anything. Then the cockroach god explained that like a frog, to have abilities and his antibodies, the more monsters he eats, the stronger he will become. How bizarre. He has to eat anything to become a god. Damn. Apparently there's a bizarre rank in front of him. So Joe decided to catch the frog first. How disgusting. But the cockroach god just stuck a frog in Joe's mouth, making him super uncomfortable, with slime and everything. Yes, Joe was crazy about power, but when he tasted the frog, he only felt a tremendously horrible taste in his mouth. A torture. Joe started to vomit because he couldn't swallow it. What agony, man. The cockroach god said that if he didn't eat, he would become food for the frogs who were surrounding him. Tremendous pressure. 2 seconds later, Joe was already surrounded by frogs. In trouble. At that moment, Joe thought, damn, he tried so hard to survive. Now you can't even eat a frog. No, his face is going into his mouth. But why? You don't feel so disgusted. Anyway, Joe did what he had to do. The system warned that after absorbing the frog, it had detected biological abilities. Acid slime, frog jumping, muscle stretching. A perfect combo, gentlemen. Joe realized that the frog's abilities weren't working on him. A huge disappointment. Poor guy. He started stomping, kicking, and killed several frogs one by one. A tremendous massacre for frogs. And then he even got bored because he was now invincible. But suddenly, Joe was blinded by a tremendous light ahead, which left him surprised. Looking closely, he saw that it was a group of people who thought that Joe was a huge naked pervert in the middle of the city. How was he going to explain what he was doing with frogs in the middle of the street while still naked? There was no way to explain anything there, right? But he was happy to see his comrades who came to save him. Joe was in the middle of the desert, with huge military trucks in front, and some armed soldiers getting out of them. What a scene, my brother! When he saw the symbol on the armored vehicle which said Elimination Squad, he connected with who he was dealing with. and remembered that he had heard about this organization in his past life. They were elite warriors, protecting humanity from monsters during that apocalypse. Their job was nothing more, nothing less, than fighting the monsters on the land and in the dungeons, and maintaining order and protecting everyone in the city. Everyone who lived under their protection had returned to a tremendously peaceful life, so meeting them meant things were bad. The whip would crack and the bullet would ricochet, but he was still hopeful. He screamed that his comrades came to save him, and the next moment he was shot a lot and fell to the ground in shock, realizing that saving him was the last thing they wanted. The guys there wanted to send him to the ground together, to the grave. He fell to the ground, and the soldiers continued shooting, just to make sure the target had been eliminated. 3 warriors with heavy armor approached his body and said they were ready for capture. Joey, almost dead, raised his hand and tried to complain. Wait, but the body was shaking, and the soldiers didn't care. The system activated, warning him that he could now control every muscle in his body. Some guys started to notice that the target was still moving. Then a squad leader started shouting to everyone that this target was very dangerous. Everyone started to get into fighting stance, and Joey tried to negotiate using the jutsu speech. Hey guys, wait, I'm not a criminal. Let me explain myself, please. But the answer was simply gunshots, bullets, and suddenly, a woman's voice gave a new order to take him alive. Damn, saved by the bell or maybe a woman. Joe was tremendously furious. What the hell is going on? Don't they understand what he says? Seeing that negotiating was not going to happen, the warriors surrounded him, closing the circle and preparing to attack once again. One of the guard warriors threw an energy whip at him, which trapped his entire body, leaving him immobilized. He hung between the bikes with his body stretched out. He screamed in tremendous exhaustion, realizing he was trapped and couldn't get out. Immediately, the system warned him of a new ability, acid iodine, which corrodes any type of thing. When those guys tried to tie him up again, he instinctively used the iodine, and the ties burned. The purple-haired girl looked at it with great interest, realizing that he was smart. Joey tried to escape, but one of the guys caught up with him, but the acid made the guy's gloves start to fall apart, and he lost complete control. The squad was tremendously surprised, and one of the soldiers looked with interest at the acid on his arm. Suddenly, that guy jumped on top of him, trying to punch him. Joey dodged it, but the attack was tremendously fast and super strong. Another guy appeared wanting to knock out Joey, but he dodged the attack very easily. Joey shouted extremely desperately, outraged by the tremendous injustice. Where are the cheaters, huh? Immediately, the system activated his ability, and soon Joey suddenly advanced, at a tremendously incredible speed. What power, my dears. When he landed, he was tremendously surprised, but happy, because that skill had worked. Phew, isn't it? Looking at the pursuers, he smiled convincingly, realizing that he had a chance to escape. As he jumped, he started teasing the guys. Do they still want to catch him? But his face changed completely when he realized that something was extremely wrong. In the air, his leg was pulled hard by the light whip, and he completely lost his balance. Now his luck is starting to turn bad. The girl with purple hair sitting in the car started to smile. So you thought you were going to run away, right? He threw him to the side without effort, and he screamed, lying on the ground. In the next instant, the whip snapped and trapped him again, and he started to panic again when he saw that he was trapped again. Joey was all tied up with purple threads, and the girl with purple hair who was next to him asked the soldier what his number was. The soldier only said there were 13. Damn, the number everyone likes. Without giving Joey time to think, the girl got off the motorcycle, dragging him along the road. While he screamed in pain, being completely grated, Joey tried to free himself, screaming to be spared, but the cars continued moving, completely ignoring his requests, treating him as if he were a mere species of animal. They soon arrived at the base city, protected by extremely large and strong walls, where the convoy was heading. One of the guards at the gate saw Vice Captain Eileen returning and ordered the Redbeard gate to open. Meanwhile, Eileen warned not to open too many gates, otherwise the monsters could take advantage and enter that city and make a splash. She entered the fortress skillfully, while continuing to drag Joey, who could only scream in pain. He ended up being taken to the Elimination Squad prison, where his next fate was already waiting for him. Walking down the hallway in a striped prison jumpsuit, Joey tried to make a joke and started complaining that, even after the apocalypse, it was illegal to walk around naked. Of course, it's illegal to walk around naked. Meanwhile, one of the guys in the white coat was tremendously surprised, because this time the prisoner not only knew what was going on, but he could also speak unlike the other 12. But Eileen quickly warned him not to take the situation as a joke because he was screwed. In 1 week, they had encountered a total of 12 strange people who were completely naked, unable to speak, and just laughing like idiots. She looked at all these people locked naked in the cell. Their poses were completely weird. The look was tremendously empty. The movements were reminiscent of dumb animals. It's like he's not human. Are you connected? One of the scientists started saying to kill them quickly, so as not to waste time. A cruel and painless death. The others started saying that if he started killing those creatures just because they were stupid and ugly, it wouldn't be any different from monsters. Outside the city walls, a hero finally understood why he had been imprisoned. He was arrested because he looks like those weirdos. He now, shocked, began to panic upon hearing about genetic analysis in his mind. He asked God Cockroach if they could be discovered through genetic analysis. At the time, he received a message from the system that genetic analysis, and his eyes widened in horror. He's screwed. They entered a dark room. Eileen said that it didn't matter if he was a pervert or just like those creatures. He was going to stay there the night. The scientist was a little intrigued, looked at the cameras and thought, surprise. Did someone mess with the others? Because the cells were empty. In one of them sat a bald guy in prison clothes. He was silent, and Eileen looked at him with a tremendously tense face. Suddenly, the head of one of the prisoners began to grow gigantic, like a bizarre balloon, and Eileen was shocked by what she saw. Our boy looked on in shock, and the women around him were clearly scared. One of them said she was flying through the ceiling. Damn! One guy, overcome with fear, screamed, "What the hell is this?" The prisoners' terrifying heads descended from the ceiling, their bones contorted into horrible grimaces, a tremendous nightmare. One of those flying heads now began to break into a tremendously frightening smile. How scary, my brother. Lifeless eyes pointed downwards in that terrible scene. The guy was now paralyzed, and one of the prisoners slowly raised his head and started making a tremendously strange noise, confirming that something terrible was about to happen. The tied-up, bald prisoner suddenly began a transformation. His face, his head began to stretch, and his eyes began to shine with sinister light, and he opened a tremendously horrifying, terrifying smile, a legitimate transformation. Suddenly, that head exploded, revealing a brain full of eyes, horrible mess of eyes and teeth. This was no longer a man. No, it was a nightmare incarnate. The woman and Joe turned around in panic, tremendously terrified to see what was happening around them. That creature had turned into a monster. It released some huge red tentacles, advancing towards them at an overwhelming speed. The guy panicked, trying to avoid the attack. While the tentacles came at him, the monster took on a complete form, an ugly, muscular body with a frightening smile full of extremely sharp teeth and multiple eyes. How horrible. The purple-haired woman got into a fighting stance right away, preparing to defend, when the tentacles rushed towards her. That girl with purple hair said that now it was clear who the real monster was. One of the scientists was tremendously horrified to see that the body was beginning to be covered in extremely strange and frightening spots. She panicked. The spots spread across her body, turning her skin into a deformed mess. She was screaming in fear and pain. Our protagonist was also infected, but he didn't lose his cool. He realized quickly that he needed to get out of there, and suddenly, a message appeared, warning him about parasitism. He needed to do something urgent, otherwise he would turn into a zombie. The scene was tremendously tense. The monster spoke with a threatening voice, which wanted her body, leaving her in an even more frightening situation. Eileen was now tremendously surprised. She didn't expect that monster to be able to speak. A species like that she had never seen before. The monster now took possession of the scientists' bodies and used them as a meat shield to attack Eileen. The girl immediately activated her power, creating strands of energy to defend herself, and flew into the air, showing agility and strength. A legitimate hero. Eileen realizes that it is difficult to deal with a parasite monster, but realizes that they are still human and cannot be killed. Furthermore, she doesn't have magic crystals, and her abilities are of no use there. Tremendous bad luck. But he soon sees a scalpel on the table, a light at the end of the tunnel. Using skill, he picks up the scalpel and throws it at the monster, with impeccable aim, but the naughty monster uses two scientists as human shields. Tremendous coward. Seeing this, Eileen pulls the thread back, and the scalpel blade comes closer to one of the girl's faces, but just a little. So, do you need a facelift? Holding Joe in its tentacles, the monster called people weak. A tremendously ugly and arrogant monster. Joe was nervous because he didn't have time to eat the spores before they came back, but then he told him to stop complaining and swallow it. The system warned that parasite spores were ingested. The ability to resist parasites began to increase, which is good. a legitimate antidote, and soon the capacity increased to 10 and to 46. It's almost. Eileen heard the monster mocking and said he was insulting, right? He threw the blade at the monster again, saying that only a coward would hide behind hostages. The monster, seeing the girl's attack, said it wouldn't do any good because it would hit his friends, but it seems the girl had a plan. The blade suddenly changed direction and went at the monster. Extremely smart she is. The monster became extremely angry and furious. The attack hit them in the arms and back, and he started to scream in pain because he didn't expect the attack to work. Eileen thought that the monster's body was not strong enough, so she had to use living creatures as a shield. But what happened? The girl suddenly began to feel pain in the same places where the blades had hit the monster. Wow, what a strange thing. Eileen didn't understand anything. The monster began to explain that the girl had hurt him, and he just transferred all the pain and injuries to the girls, and his wounds were starting to heal. A very bizarre stop. Eileen realized that this ability was extremely problematic, and suddenly, the monster started saying that the girl had been caught. A tremendously tense scene. Eileen looked at her hand and saw that something was moving. Her hand began to glow with a red light, tremendously sinister. Soon, the hand stopped obeying and began to strangle her. The monster said that she wouldn't be able to do it because she couldn't destroy the spores. Now, she was in his hands. A tremendous danger. But suddenly, the monster's gaze changed. The girl started to laugh. A tremendously strange scene. Eileen explained that she was lucky to be able to control herself and said that he could infect someone else, but her web controlled more than just the enemy body. Eileen used the thread to control the infected right arm, with the scalpel and the thread cut where the spores were to avoid complete contamination. She is very smart. He even smiled. It was a shame for the monster that everything had ended like that. The monster now agreed that she had managed to free herself, but said that by using it too many times, the girl would bleed and would no longer be able to fight. And furthermore, if Eileen tried to escape, the monster promised to kill the girls and escape too. But Eileen said she was going to make mincemeat of that monster, and he wasn't going to have a painless death. Even if the monster begged Eileen to leave, she wasn't going to run away. Meanwhile, Joe continued to absorb the spores, which also caught the monster's attention, who wondered why he couldn't control that guy. So he decided to kill Joe first, but the guy broke the handcuffs at that moment. The guy saw that he couldn't dodge the monster's attack and thought he was going to die right there. A tremendous misfortune, and immediately a purple web began to appear around his body. In the next instant, Eileen pulled Joe close to her, saving him from the monster's attack. The monster didn't like that at all, and was now wondering how this could happen. Joe fell to the floor, looking at Eileen's black panties, and thanked God for saving him. And besides, it seems like he had seen a miracle. But Eileen looked at Joe like he was a piece of trash, and grabbed him by his clothes and asked him if he was really a pervert from the beginning. You're so turned on that she found him naked, right? Eileen released the guy and came to a conclusion. Since monsters can't infect him, she had two options. First, they died together. Second, she stopped the monster and he told the world everything. Joe didn't know what to say, but he stepped forward and said he was choosing the third plan. She didn't understand anything. What plan? Third plan? Joe said they were going to team up to turn that guy into a vegetable together. A tremendously audacious plan. Eileen was surprised that Joe would want to do that, risking his own life at that moment. Joe remembered the time of his death, the time he was completely abandoned. What Joe hated most about people was when they, out of fear, threw others to be eaten and killed by monsters. The guy said that anyone who abandons their friends is worse than a monster. Now that girl was surprised that Joe was tremendously brave, a brave pervert, but she called him retarded too in her head. To be honest, Joe was tremendously confident because the system said that the monster was really weak and was only strong because of the paralysis abilities. Normal attacks worked on that creature. With that in mind, Joe would be able to live happily and work in the area protected by the elimination squad. The monster was now tremendously furious. He thought that humans were inferior creatures to him because even fighting they thought about impressing the opposite sex. Now he was tremendously disgusted. The monster began to attack the couple with its deadly tentacles. Joe saw that he was useless in the fight, so he asked Eileen to control his body. He admitted that he wasn't afraid of paralysis, but he wasn't good at fighting. The girl agreed, but warned that she could not guarantee his safety. He activated the thread's abilities, releasing threads, which wrapped around Joe's body. The energy from the threads completely filled his body, making his muscles faster and more precise. Now that girl is completely out of his control and prepared to attack. Under Eileen's control, Joe advanced. Now that monster provoked more, saying that its tentacles were inevitable. The monster said that Joe wouldn't be able to break the puppets. Eileen, without wasting time, began to activate all her power, giving Joe more strength. Joe sprang into action and Eileen coordinated every movement with tremendous precision. Those red threads attacked the enemy, but he continued to move. The girl pulled the wires monsters, and Joe dodged the attacks with tremendous confidence. Damn, what a dodge! He rushed up, and Eileen soon activated her ability. The system screen confirmed that full activation has begun. His body began to glow, radiating an intense light, and the muscle stretching and acid iodine abilities were activated. He attacked the monster with an attack accompanied by extremely powerful energy. The enemy monster began to decompose because of the acidic iodine, letting out tremendously agonizing screams. Feeling deep pain, the girl began to look tremendously surprised. Not knowing that Joe had that ability, the acid continued to eat away at the monster's flesh, and it began to lose its shape, and Joe finally delivered a final blow, destroying the monster's entire body. A tremendously sinister victory, but the monster didn't give up, saying that it could handle the damage and would survive. And suddenly, he noticed something strange. Panic appeared in his eyes. The red monster panicked when he saw the wound that wasn't healing. He saw the girl sitting next to the two people lying down, and he looked at her in surprise. And the girl said with a convinced smile that she had already gotten rid of the spores. The girl held something disgusting, covered in blood in her hand, and crushed it with tremendous ease. Observing the result, he admitted with a laugh that he liked seeing the monster like that. She's pretty cruel too, huh? The monster remained silent, its eyes wide with horror, seeing that it had lost control of the situation. And suddenly it opened its mouth, and strange sounds began to come out of it. The swollen heads began to explode, with blood flying everywhere, painting the entire place. Joe and Eileen looked surprised, not understanding what the monster was doing. Joe didn't understand anything. Was the monster taking blood from corpses? And that? The creature began to transform, and the body began to shake and change. A menacing eye appeared, extremely sinister. The two, tense as hell, began to look and concentrate to try to understand what was happening. The blood began to bubble and form a new sinister mass. It seemed irreversible. The waves of blood continued to rotate, forming a vortex, something even more dangerous. A huge, new, completely different creature appeared, made of blood, with red eyes, conveying imminent threat. The creature transformed once and for all, screaming uncontrollably. The body took on a new and even more horrible shape, a tremendous terror, and he spoke, mocking that it was the first time that human people had seen his true face, and he hoped not to disappoint. That creature rushed to attack right away. The speed was so great that the girl barely had time to react. She was thrown backwards with tremendous force against the wall. The impact was so strong that the entire metal wall dented. Our protagonist turned around in horror, realizing that things were completely ugly. Things are black. Eileen was breathing hard, poor thing, with blood running out of her mouth. She realized that the enemy's power level was completely higher than what she was expecting, a red hand on her chest. The monster wasted no time, grabbing her and throwing her aside with force, like a ragdoll. The girl flew into the air, hitting the walls, at a tremendous and enormous speed, with tremendous strength, but the monster didn't stop there. On the contrary, he followed her with the intention of ending what he had started. Now the girl fell, breaking the rocks beneath her. The body was covered in injuries, and the mind was confused with tremendous pain. The monster approached slowly, observing her despair with a predator's smile. Suddenly something hit him, making him stop in his tracks. He was surprised. Who dares to attack him? He turned his head and saw the guy standing behind him, but our protagonist now panicked, seeing that the situation had changed, but it was too late to turn back. The guy was very afraid of the monster, which rushed at him with the speed of a monster, and the guy only managed to fly with a tremendous strong blow from the monster, with blood gushing from his mouth. What a blow! He hit the wall with a tremendous bang, leaving a deep mark from the impact. A message appears on the screen, danger, with broken bones all over his body, damaged internal organs. Then the system begins to inform him that lethal damage has been detected, and the immortality skill remains active. The regeneration process will begin soon. The body recovers and the damage disappears. He feels a deep relief, and his legs regain their strength, and he slowly stands up. An absurd recovery. The guy screams in terror, thinking he's dying, but it was just a scare. That little cockroach, God starts to warn him not to move. If he is hit again, he does not guarantee a recovery like this one. Joe was lying on the floor, pressed down, and realizes that one way is to play dead. The plan is obvious, but he barely opens his eyes and takes in the scene, and he tells the girl to hold on tight, because victory depends on her, their last hope. The monster, exuding the aura of terrifying authority, approaches, while Joe stands still, paralyzed, waiting for the enemy to lose interest in him, but still very afraid. The monster looks at the fallen body with deep disdain, smiling and talking. Ah, boy, so weak, so weak. What arrogance, wanting to attack me and win? Just look. Suddenly, there was a blow, and the monster flinched, not expecting the attack. It was a complete surprise for him. The girl runs to attack at enormous speed, aiming for the monster's head. The monster reacts faster than she could expect, intercepts her leg, avoiding the attack, throws her aside with fury and strength, onto the ground again, cracking everything where she hit. The monster monster didn't want to stop and threw the girl straight to the ceiling with tremendous brutality. Eileen was bleeding. It would just take a little longer. The monster ripped off an iron chair, saying that they once trapped him there. Saying he was uncomfortable, he picked up the iron chair and threw it at the falling girl. She hit the wall so hard that she couldn't move anymore. Both legs were broken, poor things, and the girl was in a lot of pain. I think she was going to land on her feet or to the grave, but she was still able to control her arm. Joe began to observe what was happening and realized he couldn't help. Not even the squad's runner-up could destroy the monster. Who was going to save them? And at that moment, someone called Joe. It was someone studious, asking to give Eileen something in her hands. There was a red crystal, which would release her power. Joe took the crystal, but realized he didn't know how he was going to give her the stone. The monster was getting closer to the girl. At that moment, the cockroach god appeared and told Joe to reach the girl using the ability to stretch the muscle. You're so connected that he acquired the frog's abilities, right? Why isn't he using? And according to his calculations, the chance of success was 10%. Joe didn't like it at all, because it wasn't much, but God told him to choose. 10% chance of succeeding, or 100% of dying without doing anything. He then began to grind his teeth, knowing he had no options. Having decided, he started to get up, activating the ability to stretch muscle, and said, "To hell with it." Joe ran towards the girl, but the monster noticed right away. The cockroach god didn't expect the monster to react so quickly. The chance of survival dropped to less than 5%. What bad luck, my brother. In this case, Joe had to fight, jumping onto the monster's head. And the god said that now there is only a 1% chance left, but Joe looked like he had made it. But the monster grabbed his leg and asked him what he thought he was doing. Now the chance of success was 0%. Joe was thrown to the ground, with a movement that seemed like a complete disaster, shaking everything. The monster decided to crush the guy's head first. Joe began to think he had no chance of achieving anything, but it was still his last chance. With the movement, he threw the red crystal to her, a tremendously bold move. Then the monster crushed Joe with its huge foot. The monster started to scream, calling him a weak young man, a legitimate insect, but his look changed. Under his foot, he saw that the young man was still alive, being wrapped in a purple thread. It looks like the red monster lord is in trouble now. The cockroach god was now smilingly thinking. It was then that the monster realized that the web was connected to the girl. Meanwhile, the girl said that she was moved that Joe had given the crystal at the risk of his own life. And at that moment, a purple web began to wrap around her body, and the monster also began to be absorbed by the web, which he didn't like at all, poor thing. The girl pulled the web, and the monster lost its balance and fell to the ground. She began to summon the power of a spider sword and jumped to end the fight in one fell swoop, but it wasn't over yet. The red monster was alive and talking about pathetic and weak human beings, even using power. He broke the sword in half with tremendous force, then grabbed the woman by the neck and began to squeeze, piercing her body without mercy or mercy, spreading the blood throughout the room. Joe, resting his arm on the ground, knelt holding the wound, and in the distance, the monster was still standing still. She was hanging limp. The tentacle was attached to her body, and our boy realized the situation was dire. He had almost no chance of winning, poor guy. The monster looked at her and said, "Die, you pathetic human insect." And suddenly, flashes of red light, as if something exploded, except it was blood. The monster trembled at the base, with a surprised look. The arms were ripped off, and Joe also noticed, and his eyes widened immediately. He didn't expect that either. And at that moment, a tall guy with long hair appeared, carrying his wife free of everyone. Soon more guys appeared with the same armor. The monster started to glare and asked who those are now. More people came together for his party. 3 guys in high-tech armor appeared there. One of them was holding her. Looking at her condition, she was very injured, a poor thing. She saw the body on the floor and stopped, examining it carefully, assessing the condition, and said that the insides, the bones, and the muscles were all crushed. The situation was very critical. The woman arrived with the green crystal and said she was going to start the treatment. She was introduced as the captain of the 10th squad. A red-haired guy holding the woman said that no monster hurt them. He was the captain of the 2nd squadron. The 3rd guy said, laughing, that he was going to have fun with that monster. He was none other than Commander Karen, and they began to warn the monster that no one there was ordinary, that he should be careful. But Karen smiled too, and didn't take that threat seriously. The white-haired woman, extremely angry, told them both to be quiet, because she needed silence to continue the healing treatment. She then raised the green crystal, tremendously concentrated. That crystal began to shine, radiating a green light using the healing ability. How effective was it? Green energy entered the ground, activating a spell. Huge flowers began to appear with injured people inside. The girl and the other woman woke up inside the cocoons, and a guy in armor was walking towards them. Joe was in one of the flowers and looked around in surprise. Flower cocoons? A heat began to envelop his entire body, as if he were in a hot spring. He felt his wounds being completely healed and healing. He began to relax, feeling a deep relief, and suddenly, a cockroach got him and screamed right in his ear. Joe screamed in pain, and from afar, the girl said that it shouldn't have hurt so much. That creature smiled and told Joe to watch the fight because he had a show ahead of him. A guy in armor introduced himself as Karen William, the squad commander, and told the creature to speak. The monster replied that he did not negotiate with food. The atmosphere began to change and became very hot. The two were facing each other without looking away. Suddenly, blood started running down the walls. The guy in armor looked up. The monster started to say that he had already devoured all his brothers who had been there. The creature, surrounded by rivers of blood, said that everyone was going to the grave. The monster began to laugh, waving all its tentacles. Joe now began to look around, fearfully and quite anxiously. He started screaming, realizing that there were monsters everywhere. The situation seems to be tremendously desperate. A warrior with mechanical arms advanced, concentrated, gathering strength to attack. That warrior hit the ground hard, releasing streams of energy. They spread out, forming whirlpools that began destroying several monsters at once. Gusts of wind destroyed the creatures, and the bodies flew everywhere. Screams and blood everywhere. Tremendous carnage. The force of the impact didn't give the monsters a chance. They exploded into the air, howling helplessly. The green-haired mage stood aside, observing the tremendous situation, and realized that they were surrounded and had to act quickly. She began using magic and created a barrier of whirlwinds, protecting herself and her friends. That barrier became an obstacle that those monster enemies couldn't get past. Our protagonist looked at what was happening, impressed by his friend's powers, but he could only watch. The creature smiles, looking at that guy, saying that he caught two commanders at once and decided to deal with him first. A thick liquid begins to bubble and rise around the monster. The creature begins to suck the substance, laughing. His body starts to get gigantic and increases a lot. His muscles became tremendously strong and toned. The monster is now colossal. Joe, sitting on the flower, watches in shock. The monster transformed for the third time, damn it. He thought this was completely unfair. That guy starts commenting on the monster's metamorphosis ability, saying that he needs to prepare better to do it again. The monster doesn't listen and attacks, screaming, with the punch right in the middle of his face. That guy remains intact, motionless, and suddenly he just dodges to the side and says that that attack shows that his reflexes are very bad. A nice display of a trash monster. The monster is now disgusted, and screaming starts to launch several attacks, now using its several arms at once, and a hook. But the guy manages to jump and dodge that blow. Soon, a right attack, but the guy manages to avoid it too. The monster then tries to grab him, as punches aren't working. The guy dodges again. The monster starts grunting and tells that guy to stop dodging and stay still and just take the hit. So the guy jumped up, but suddenly some tentacles come, and one of those tentacles catches him. Oh no, now he's been caught, and the monster starts to grunt, roaring and saying that it's got him now, but he starts to draw his sword confidently and gives that monster several consecutive blows. And in the next few moments he falls to the ground. The monster was sliced 4 in the air. While he is there, watching the pieces of the monster still falling to the ground, the monster keeps asking what happened. He trembles with fear, looks at the guy's finger, and then the guy blows the monster's entire body apart just with the shock of his finger. Damn, what a strong guy. The monster is now reduced to its slightly smaller version, resembling an octopus with a brain and multiple eyes. He just slaps the monster, picks it up, throws it into a capsule, and smiles and says he did it. Finally, he managed to catch that monster he wanted so much and had been chasing for a long time. The captain begins to say that he was the talking monster first and suggests giving him a name. Lily screams, extremely irritated, saying that those guys only think about entertainment, but how are they going to explain the complete destruction of the laboratory? Joe watches from afar, still sitting on the flower, looking shocked at the brutal difference in power. He receives an ironic comment from the cockroach god and then falls asleep. Then we are taken to an ordinary apartment building with sounds. Joe opens his eyes and realizes he is now in a bathroom, looking around, not knowing where he is, panicking. He sees that he is in a bathtub full of water. The face is very confused, and he hears a sound and sees a figure behind the curtain, apparently a girl. His eyes immediately widen. He is shocked. The girl peers from behind the curtain, asking if he's awake yet, and explains that the genetic analysis isn't finished, and the rules require him to spend a night in custody. As the prison was destroyed, she took him into custody. The guy wonders if they really need to be together, and then, completely naked and wet, the girl with her arms crossed responds that he is just exaggerating, because there is only hot water there. He has no other option. She introduces herself to him as Eileen, the deputy commander, and reminds him to say his own name. The guy tries to remember his name and stutters that's probably Joe's. The girl puts her foot in the water, gets into the bathtub, and asks him to move away. Our protagonist watches as he gets into the bathtub, and he is still completely embarrassed, in panic, watching the girl. But he is so turned on that he has never seen a girl like her come into the world. That guy is a legitimate virgin. If it were me, things would heat up there, you know what I'm saying. The girl sitting in the bathtub asks the young man to turn towards her because she wants to examine all her injuries. When the guy feels her touch on his body, he starts to panic, shocked, and it's a good thing she couldn't see his body from the front, because if he had been standing up, she would have been able to see the hairy worm that the frog wrapped its tongue around that day. Upon examining the body, he notices that the injuries are completely healed. The girl starts to say that his skills are quite interesting. The cockroach god notices that his pulse is getting faster, and his heartbeat is increasing, hormones rising and something growing, and offering to activate reproduction mode. The guy panics. What reproduction? Are you crazy? And he refuses right away. That guy is a virgin. Without a doubt, are you crazy, my brother? He is very afraid of women. She now asks to check the scars on his chest. After all, that monster was tremendously brutal. Then he turns around and begins to realize that he has never seen anything so big in his life. While she's saying that the captain had cured her and the scars are still there, if he doesn't believe her, she just drags her hair to the side and asks him to look at those scars. Damn! While the little cockroach is there, activating the reproduction mode in 5, 4, 3, 2, and before finishing the count, that guy over there gets up from the bathtub and runs out. He's crazy and closes the door with tremendous force. And she doesn't understand what is happening in the bathtub, and he's already there in his room, tremendously embarrassed. Are you crazy? If he had stayed in there for a second longer, he would have been even more embarrassed. And he wonders what that system reproduction mode is. How does it work? Then suddenly, on television, some news starts to show recent spatial fluctuations detected near the city of Bingai, a small human outpost 50 kilometers away, run by non-governmental forces, was attacked. That place is where he lived. Did everyone die? The news continues to pass. When the termination squad arrived there, the entire post had already been abandoned. If he hadn't left, he probably would have died there too. And he stops and thinks. As he listens to the news, the guy keeps saying that citizens are remembered. Abysses are portals to supernatural realms, and if anyone detects one, they are to report it to the authorities immediately. A little cockroach soon appears, telling him to stop thinking too much. And anyway, she has some very interesting news for him. The little fat man is back, 100% of his life. That guy is his Imperial Guard. From now on, the chubby guy is immortal, and no matter how many times he is crushed, as long as our Joe is alive, he will come back to life. It seems like that skill is a very top skill, right? But how can a cockroach that never dies be a guard for a human? He still doesn't understand. The guy just says that that cockroach can level with him too. Right now, he can share the vision with him. He tries to revive that fat cockroach, and soon it appears, calling him dear brother. He missed you so much, and he realizes that his big brother is a little ugly now. He doesn't like humans very much, but the cockroach god says to send him to fly. Just close your eyes that he will synchronize with the vision of that cockroach. The guy starts flying and knocks on the wall, and then goes through the door and goes to the bathroom. Look, what did he find? And Arjo is there contemplating the vision, not believing what that cockroach is doing there. He has already told to cheap out of there fast. The cockroach only says that he thought deep down he could feel. He was wanting to take a peek, no doubt. The woman is sitting there in the bathtub, thoughtful. So suddenly, she throws her purple strands into the cheap, and she is completely sprayed in the air yet. Joe feels that emotion on her body and falls hard on the floor. Barada God forgot to mention that when he shares senses with the fat man, and if he dies, he will also suffer a completely negative reaction. At nightfall, and on the birth of the day, the second day, he receives a test report, and the girl just says that everything is normal. He looks, and she says he's free to go, and can leave. He puts the result on the table, and starts to be very thoughtful, and tells her that he wants to enter the extermination squad too, but she's still crossing her arms, says their mortality rate is ridiculously high. Does he still want to enter? Maybe he will only die on the battlefield, and he tells her that perhaps the survival rate between normal people is better. Is that what she's talking about? He is also an awakening, and knows he can be able to fight with her. He screams with her again, asking if he can enter yes or no. She realizes that he is determined. A quadrennial extermination squad selection tournament is in 7 days, and if his ability is not bad, he will be able to enter, but rumors say that that year's competition is the hardest in history. He is still determined, and only tells her to take care of it for him. After all, she's not the kind of person who ignores debts, right? He managed to save her life. She looks down and asks him to wait. She admits his blatant persistence. As they talked, a guy was watching everything thin, hidden in the shadows. She just says she will give him a chance. Special training, say. A doctor there is asking why the captain told him to falsify the tests of that guy's medical report, because clearly the report showed something not human. The guy with words economist says this is going to be the secret between both from now on. I hope this video can reach 1,000 likes and 200 comments for the next part. That's all for today. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned for the next video.
Suddenly, they're in the training room at the doorstep of the abyss. But without anyone pushing a button, that steel sphere starts moving. Joey's in disbelief. Is the training really to be thrown into the abyss? Is this for real? No joke, right? That abyss is crawling with monsters, and the monsters inside are way stronger than the ones outside. He figures even an army wouldn't stand a chance against them. How are they supposed to jump into an abyss and call it training? He glances back at his team. Just 4 teenagers: Justin, Luhao, Sukai, and Songtian. A girl explains that each abyss connects to another world, and depending on how deteriorated that world is, their ranking goes from E to S for danger. The higher the ranking, the stronger the monsters and the larger the area. That gate leads to an abyss already explored by the extermination squad. She starts opening the portal, explaining that the squad's job is to go in and drive out all the monsters, delaying the invasion of that other world into their reality. She says these abyss are tunnels left behind by giant worms during the Great Cataclysm. Then she suddenly hits the button to open the portal and steps right into the middle. The portal's open now, and Justin, who's got abyss experience, will lead the team. He gets it and accepts. In a flash, they're in a dense forest, a dark, silent jungle rated E. Joey looks around and all he sees is undergrowth and massive trees. Damn, so this is what an abyss is like. Out of nowhere, giant monkeys and enormous snakes start watching them. Man, Joey notices it's not just monkeys and snakes. It's monkeys with snake tails. He looks to the side and sees giant spiders and he starts to freak out. These trees are huge and towering. He wonders if this is really Earth, because just stepping through the gate feels like another world, while everyone else is checking him out. They start heading into the thick of it, and suddenly, the guy spots Joey holding something. He throws a bag at Joey and tells him not to touch any monsters inside the abyss. Just carry the bags and follow them. Joey doesn't get it, while the guy is thinking that Joey slept with Instructor Aylin. How dare this jerk hit on his goddess? Oh, there'll be payback. But then Joey lowers his head, and the guy starts to get worried, thinking he doesn't want to carry anything. But all of a sudden, Joey starts grinning. Okay, no touching anything. I won't touch a thing. No problem, I'll carry it all myself. The guy's clueless, while Joey's smiling, but thinking he's totally safe. The guy just thinks he's not right in the head. Joey starts shouting for everyone to give him their backpacks. A girl comes closer, saying he doesn't need to worry. She's got it covered, and he's safe and sound. After all, as a normal person, she has no idea why he's forbidden from hunting monsters. But what's the big deal? He needs to see how Awakened fight in a dungeon. A few moments later, the fight starts. The guy starts burning all the monkeys in one go. Amazing. While another starts slicing monsters in half, Joey's on alert, just watching. Apparently, the Awakened's crystal weapons absorb the monsters' abilities when they kill them in the abyss, and they also gain experience. Basically, it's like a game. The more they kill, the stronger they get, and the faster they level up. The guy with the big sword is already mowing down all the giant roaches. Even the best Awakened his age get exhausted from constant fighting. That guy's already killed 310 monsters and finally leveled up. Is Joey really different? But then, out of nowhere, he pulls out a napkin, puts it on his chest, and starts slicing off pieces of meat and eating. While everyone else has to work hard to acquire new abilities and get stronger, he just needs to eat. What a cheat. He's eating long monkey arms and even got the monkey tail ability. Oh, let's see if it's a snake, huh? He doesn't need to kill any monsters. All he needs to do is cook. He just eats a piece of them and gains their characteristics. He's also acquired toxin resistance. He's also acquired jungle adaptation. And look at that, another characteristic, sunlight affinity. Phew, he's full now. Man, he ate so much. Look at the size of his belly. He's even lying down now, tired from eating so much. Training was tough, wasn't it? While he's resting, he's already decided. If he joins an extermination squad, he's going straight to logistics. That way, he can watch the others fight while he gets stronger just from eating. It's an awesome plan. Suddenly, they yell, "Praise be to the god of roaches." He doesn't have free time. It's been so long, and now he can get stronger. While everyone's working their butts off killing monsters, he's out there grilling some meat and chilling. Everyone stops and stares at him, wondering what the heck he's doing. They're fighting for their lives, and he's just having one buffet after another. And in the silent and dark forest, or not so silent actually, a huge beast starts running. That's the heavy-horned jungle beast, and it's facing off against a giant monkey that grunts, ready to take it head-on. That's the Monkey King, but he was no match for that monster. With just one attack, that beast sent him to the grave while Joey's watching everything, hidden. Man, that's the final boss of the Abyss, the heavy-horned savage beast. He's still in shock. That monster was able to defeat the Monkey King with the snake tail, who's almost on the same level as a knight, like it was nothing. Just half a level difference, but the difference in power is huge. But the guy comes closer and says they can do it. If everyone follows his plan, they'll beat that boss. Joey's thinking, remembering what the girl told him. If he gets hurt, crippled, or worse because he ignored the rules and charged in recklessly, the health insurance won't cover it. He remembers that Aylin told him not to fight the boss, so he's out. A guy grabs his shirt and yells at him, "Nah, kid. No one needs you here. Better grab the backpacks and stay in the safe zone, you idiot." The girl in the back doesn't say anything, but she's also mad. They start making a plan with the map, while the guys tell him to stay put. He thanks them and wishes them luck, leaving, while the other two laugh at him. The girl knows that the captain sent that guy to the ambush point for the final battle. The guy smiles and says that's exactly it. He's already put explosives in the 4 backpacks that Joey carried. As soon as the boss gets there, he'll detonate them. Then they'll just move forward, clean up what's left, and all it'll cost is a useless teammate like that guy. Damn. The girl's confused. It's a suicide mission. She's in shock and tries to help that guy, but suddenly, the guy puts a sword to her neck and tells her to cut the crap. He'll only let it slide once. Later, Joey's in the safe zone, still collecting monster corpses to devour, and suddenly, he hears a weird noise. He thinks the fights are so crazy that he can hear it from there, but the noise starts getting louder and closer. Apparently, that thing's coming his way. And suddenly, a bunch of monkeys comes out of there. But they're not attacking Joey, they're running past him extremely fast. And he hides, thinking those things went right past him, and suddenly, the wood back there starts breaking, trees falling everywhere. And he looks up and sees the ox right in front of him, charging incredibly fast. But unfortunately, before he can react, he's hit square in the chest with one strike. That monster doesn't stop there. It keeps dragging Joey, smashing through trees one after another, only stopping when Joey's body slams into a massive rock. Poor Joey, covered in blood. Now he gets it. The ox is here. The ox's massive horn is sticking out of his chest. While he's wondering what the ox is doing here, suddenly the roach god appears, saying that a fatal injury has been detected. Joey asks if the whole team was wiped out by that monster, but then a flaming arrow appears and lands on the backpack he was carrying. He realizes there are a bunch of explosives inside. He starts to think it's weird to have so many explosives in the backpack. By the time it hits him that there are explosives there, it's too late. Everything goes up in flames. Boom. Unfortunately, he figures he's been abandoned again. These guys used him as bait. The explosion is so strong it burns the whole area. Meanwhile, his allies are watching from afar. The guy up top starts smiling. He tells everyone to see if they saw his face at the end. Now, they just need to go down and finish off the boss. 2 birds with 1 stone. But then the girl asks the captain to take a closer look, and he notices something in the smoke. And there he is, Joey. No one understands what's going on. Joey grabs the beast's horn. People are saying he's still alive. He pulls the horn out of his chest, and his body completely regenerates. Straining, he says he really thought he was dead. Suddenly, he grabs that monster with both hands and lifts it up. The captain's in shock, watching. He picks up the beast and throws it far away towards the captain, saying he won't die that easily. Boom! The captain felt the shockwave, but was unharmed. Unfortunately, someone yelled the captain's name. It was Song Xian in the wreckage, begging for help. The captain yells, gripping his sword. If you don't want to die, focus on killing the ox. The captain draws his sword, while the boy pleads for mercy. Without any pity, the captain activates the flesh-destroying arrows. Suddenly, that guy's body starts swelling and expanding, but the attack didn't just hit him. It hit the ox too. The ox starts roaring and starts to rise, now standing and roaring loudly. The captain orders everyone to attack the monster, and the guy rushes forward with a fireball in his hands. He launches a fireball at the monster, while the girl shoots lightning bolts at it. The monster starts roaring loudly, taking those 2 attacks. He yells louder and louder. The girl thinks it's almost over, while the captain thinks that monster isn't as strong as the legends say. After all, how could that idiot lift that monster like it was a rag doll? How strong is he? Really? So he charges toward the monster, telling that bastard to die. But the monster notices him getting close and manages to channel the magic it was receiving into its horn. Now they're screwed. It just absorbed all their energy, and they have to stop using elemental attacks immediately. Now the beast is even stronger. The more damage it takes, the stronger it gets. Crap. Now he realizes they can't beat that monster. The 3 of them are trapped, but he thinks of an idea. He grabs one of his subordinates and hits him hard in the back of the neck. Now the guy's unconscious. The girl realizes it's Justin. Is he going to kill this guy too? But the captain punches her hard in the stomach. Now both of them are unconscious, and he just says that they were hindering them before, so dead, they should be more useful. That scumbag leaves the 2 of them there and runs, telling them to be ungrateful. The monster appears and starts sniffing them. Now it's going to have its meal. The monster steps on the first one and crushes him with its paw. And when it's about to step on the second, Joey dashes over and picks her up in his arms. Waking up, she wonders why this guy came back to save her. He says that back then, she was the only one who didn't bully him and let him carry the backpack because he was weak. In his past life, people always treated him like cannon fodder without thinking twice. Now, like a cockroach, he's weak again and was forced to lead the way and die for the bigger roaches. Unfortunately, he didn't provoke anyone, and he was still betrayed. In this world, only the strong have the right to control their own destiny, so he needs to get stronger. The other guy is still alive, begging for help, and he screams as he's crushed by the monster's paw. Please, save me. He remembers people telling him not to touch any monsters. He looks back and thinks those youths are idiots. The captain coughs. Huh. The guy screams but is completely crushed by the monster. Yeah, looks like our hero isn't so heroic after all. He then activates Sleep Doctor Pollen. It's a type of pollen from the tranquility flower that causes unconsciousness when inhaled in large quantities. The girl falls into a deep sleep, and he leaves her on the rock, thinking it's better to keep his abilities a secret for now. He looks at the monster and says, "Now it's just you and me, mano a mano." The monster looks at him too. Apparently, it agrees. He cracks his hands, saying he's going to use that monster as a stepping stone to gain more power. A boss wastes no words and charges toward Joey. But Joey, extremely fast, flicks his tongue onto a tree and manages to dodge the monster's attack, using his tongue like a vine. Good thing he managed to acquire various abilities along the way. Now it's time to put them all into practice. Now, he'll activate Mantis Scythe, transforming his lower limbs into a kind of mantis limbs able to grip easily. Man, what a crazy dude. So awesome. He jumps onto the monster, now with his mantis arm, and tries to pierce its hide. He strikes several times and keeps striking. It seems that hide is too tough. Even after upgrading, his ability can't cut that boss so easily. Maybe he has a plan. The boss keeps running, and he jumps, thinking that even though the boss has an extremely evolved shell for armor, he decides to try now on the abdomen. After all, that spot is always the weakest. So he hits the monster's belly hard, piercing it. The monster roars in pain and he smiles, thinking he found the monster's weak spot. But now the monster looks at him, and now he realizes the monster doesn't have good intentions. The monster starts swinging its paw and spins its whole body with full force. And Joey flies away, and in the middle of the dense forest, deep in the back, he hits his back on a rock and starts coughing up blood. That monster is huge and very fast. How is he going to deal with that monster? And suddenly, the monster starts imbuing its horn with lightning and concentrates even more lightning. Suddenly, it releases a power towards Joey. Crap, now Joey is trapped. The power hits him head on, and it continues to launch more lightning, electrocuting the whole region. After the smoke clears, several trees there are completely broken by that power, and the monster observes and notices strange arms and strange skin. Joey, apparently, absorbed the wood skin. It has high resistance to electricity but is extremely weak to fire. In fact, as he thought, no matter how strong a monster is, there's always something in its environment that can combat it. Now he has an effective way to block the monster's attacks, but he still needs a finisher. He faces the monster and tells the monster to come at him. Suddenly, he activates his long arms and grabs a fallen sword far away. The final attack will be fatal. He stomps his feet on the ground and roots activate. The roots rush towards the monster, trying to trap it. Finally, Joey seems to have bound the beast in the vines. The monster roars, trying to break free, but before it can, Joey's right above it, ready to slice it. But before he cuts, he has to do that famous war cry, telling the monster to go to hell. Before Joey can finish, the monster breaks free and roars. Now Joey's really screwed. That monster broke free with brute strength alone. Unfortunately, there's no time to dodge. He activates his elastic muscles and increased muscle strength. The sword clashes against the monster's horn, causing a loud crack, and the sword breaks in half. Crap, now he's in trouble. He throws the hilt of the sword back and decides to go barehanded. While the monster is roaring and coming at him with tremendous speed and fury, he grabs a piece of the monster. Looking at the monster, he apologizes. After all, the fight's already over. He's acquired an ability that will cause the monster's defeat. He puts that piece in his mouth and acquires the sharp horn of the heavy horned beast ability, and his body is now imbued with super overpowered armor. Damn, he got the monster's own ability. This skin is awesome. Suddenly, he rushes towards the monster, delivering blows so fast and precise that the shock makes it hard to even see. Moments later, everything in the area is broken, and there's Joey on top of the completely defeated monster. Joey is victorious, and suddenly a key appears. The key to the secret realm. If he uses that key within the time limit, it will grant access to the secret realm. He looks at the key, wondering what it is. Meanwhile, people are reporting the accident at the training grounds. There are 3 dead and 1 seriously injured, unconscious, and 1 with minor injuries. Some guys are saying to get the injured to the doctor quickly. The officer is yelling at Joey, telling him to quickly say what's going on and what happened inside that dungeon and why he's the only one who made it out alive. He's thinking about what he should say. Should he say he got lucky or that he escaped because of the monster's horn? No way, that seems too fake to him. Suddenly, someone comes closer to the officer and starts asking if it's just him or if the military is suspecting the vice captain's recruit is responsible for the deaths. Is that how they see it? Is he behind this whole disaster? Joey is shocked. An officer starts to deny. Oh, what's that? That's not what I meant. It's just that all those victims that time were recruits elected by the military. So it's natural that investigations are done. The guy looks at Joey, puts his hand on the officer's shoulder, and says that nobody goes into a dungeon expecting 0 deaths. And it's good that's not what he meant, right? Now our dear Joey, he's dismissed. Joey just stares. Later, he's on the rooftop thinking, is that guy protecting him on purpose, just because he was recommended by his vice captain? Nah, he decides it's not worth thinking about that nonsense. What matters now is what the secret realm really is. Suddenly, the roach god appears, saying that the secret realm is a hidden dimension inside a dungeon. He can only enter using a hand key. Technically speaking, this isn't something that normal humans can get, but since his DNA is almost identical to a monster, the Abyss classified him as a boss fight, like a territorial battle between monsters, and that's why the key dropped. Now he understands that this is almost like an exclusive dungeon for him to get stronger. Exactly, but the monsters inside are much deadlier than what he's faced so far. And on top of that, he'll have to deal with an entity that gave the original key, kind of like those horned beasts. He knows that mushroom monster before. Maybe there's one of those intelligent creatures guarding a secret of the dungeon core. He asks what the countdown is for. Basically, if he doesn't use that key in 24 hours, it will disappear. So he has to go fast. He looks at the key and wonders if he will or won't go. Then he gets up, still in his pajamas, and says, "But of course." But before that, he needs to settle something first. After all, maybe he can die in there. Later, he's on his knees, begging Aelin to go on a date with him. But suddenly, she's impressed by his nerve and kicks him hard in the face with tremendous force. How dare he mess with her? She goes at him without mercy and grabs his shirt, telling him to say that again if he has the courage. But that guy is audacious and says again, "Please, go on a date with me." But before he can even close his mouth, she gives him another right punch to the face and keeps hitting him without mercy several times. She hit him so many times that her fist started bleeding, and she keeps telling him to say it again. He's all scraped up on the ground and says he'll say it 1,000,000 times, "Go on a date with me." She looks down and notices his gaze. Apparently, his gaze is the same gaze of regret, trying to fulfill his last wish before dying. Suddenly, she starts to smile. Apparently, that guy has courage. Fine, she accepts his invitation, after beating him a lot, of course. Later, they're in a coffee shop, drinking juice by the beach, and after that, they go to the movies to watch a horror video, and he, all scared, starts grabbing her. After the movie ends, they go buy some teddy bears and take some pictures, then go on a bike ride. He thinks he finally had his first date. Phew, he's been planning this for 20 years. Every little detail was perfected, except for one thing: he never had a girl to go out with, and now he can die without regret. While she's watching him from behind, she suddenly stops and starts saying that she's seen several soldiers die in front of her. No matter how many wishes they fulfill, nothing beats staying alive. She doesn't know what happened to that guy in the dungeon, what's on his mind, but instead of planning to die without regrets, stay alive. That way, he can actually get the life he wants. Damn, that was a shock to him. He stops for a moment, lowers his head, and thanks her and goes back to pedaling. She says that she hopes that next time he'll still have the desire and courage to ask her out again. Later, he's on the rooftop talking to the roach god. Seriously, all this, and the only thing he wanted was a date, so there's the key. Suddenly, he breaks it, and a portal appears in front of him. He looks at that huge portal and starts to go inside, thinking that the roach god still doesn't understand what that meant to him. That's the real way for him to end a chapter of his life. So he finishes entering, and there he is again, in a dark and dense forest, completely alone. Crazy. Right in front of him is a giant guardian-class snake-tailed monkey, tremendously large. An old version of him would have run, but he's already shown his new skin, which I personally loved. He gets a boost and goes towards that monkey, and the monkey tries to grab him. The monkey is strong, but Joey is fast and starts tearing apart the monkey's arm. There he is right at the back of the monkey's neck, but before he can finish the monster turns and grabs his leg. Now he's in trouble, and it threw him away towards a tree. Joe hits his back on the tree while the monkey is going towards him without mercy. Before he could do anything, the monkey G2. Ouch, that's gotta hurt. Will Joey be able to recover? But then he activates his sleep pollen inductor, and his limbs start to regenerate. Now he's good as new, or almost. Apparently, those monkey monsters are a bit weaker than the heavy-horned jungle beast, but there are a lot of them. If he wasn't immortal now because of his abilities, he would have kicked the bucket. Naturally, he can't beat that monster in a melee fight, but wait, now he has a plan. Since the environment of the secret realm is similar to the abyss, that means there should also be predators to combat those monkeys. But now he remembers that maybe a spider is perfect, so he starts dispersing more pollen and starts climbing the trees, and the monkeys watch. He's thinking of luring the monkeys into the predator's turf. He starts jumping from branch to branch with his frog ability, thinking he actually has a chance. The monkeys start falling into Joey's trap, and he's increasingly getting lost in the middle of the forest. Suddenly, one of the monkeys grabs his leg, thinking it caught Joey, but Joey activates the corrosive muscle and manages to break free. Suddenly, he found it. There it is, the trap made by spiders. That's the broodmother, a giant hunter at guardian danger level. He then activates his new skin. Damn, each one is more beautiful than the last, and the name of that skin is white-tailed partridge. The spider starts to grunt, and he jumps closer, while watching the spiders, thinking if he disguises himself as a natural predator of the spiders, they won't attack him. Yeah, good thing he absorbs some characteristics from the corpses of the fairies, and they're finally going to pay off at the right moment. Then, suddenly, he notices that several giant monkeys are wrapped in spider webs, and the spiders are coming down to devour them. While they roar, the spiders eat. They inject all the poisonous liquid inside the skin of those mutant monkeys, while he roars. And now, weakened by the poison, he'll be turned into a nice meal for the spiders. While the spiders are having a feast with their monkey enemies below, Joey just watches. The snake-tailed monkeys are being dominated by their natural predator. But what he finds strange is that those hunter spiders usually hunt by capturing isolated prey, and right now, more monkeys are coming to that area. A whole gang of monkeys simply invaded the enemy's territory, but the spiders won't let those guys take over their territory. Now, it's turned into a deadly war between monkeys and spiders, while Joey watches, smiling. Chaos like this is exactly what he needs. Now he activates the mantis scythe and jumps from the top of that tree towards the monkeys and the spiders and starts tearing everything apart. It's monkey, it's spider, every creature that's down there, while thinking that continuing to attack the rear guard, equalizing the playing field for the weaker side, and ensuring the battle continues. Suddenly, he starts to eat some monkeys that are already on the ground to acquire new abilities, while he takes the opportunity to acquire more characteristics. Suddenly, he notices that he hasn't gained anything, not even a little bit. Then the roach god appears, calling him an idiot. Did he think his power was that simple? He can't simply bite a random monster and think he'll get stronger. No. To acquire stronger characteristics, he needs to devour specific parts of his enemies. From now on, that cheap god will mark them for him. Then he starts to see that if he bites there, he'll absorb a characteristic. That characteristic is located right in the biceps of the giant monkeys. Ah, now he understands. So he went there to eat, and strangely, he never said anything about the taste. The only thing that interests that guy is ability. Now he obtained the new characteristic. Long arms of the cobra monkey updated by giant arms of the cobra monkey, while in the background, the fight continues. In a chaotic battlefield like this, he has plenty of time to continue evolving. He continues to acquire more and more abilities. Increased resistance, venomous stinger, paralyzing poison, resistance to paralysis, taking advantage of every opportunity that arises. Now, with a gruesome, bloodied look, he says it's now their turn to clean up that dungeon and starts cleaning everything up, whether it's a spider or a monkey, tearing his opponents faster and stronger each time. After a long day, there he is with the roach god near a door. Finally, he has access to the final boss's room. Apparently, there's a giant aura emanating from within, strong and incredible. Then he looks to the side and sees a strange object above a pile of corpses. What could that be? He gets closer and picks up that ball. The roach god says that's a secret realm genie. That item can only be found in a monster cemetery exclusive to secret realms and ultra mega power rare magic crystal. Over the years, it has absorbed the residual energy of countless dead monsters and has a huge amount of energy. Ah, now he can absorb that item all at once or use half the power to open a rift and safely exit the secret realm. Joey looks at that crystal and thinks, should he face the ox or get out of there alive? Risk everything or gain more power or stay safe? But apparently, this is the best chance he has to evolve. And if he gives up now, who knows if he'll have another opportunity like this. So he feels confident and walks towards the portal. He's never faced a boss like that yet, and he doesn't know why he's not running now. After Joe entered the portal, it looks like a kind of hell with a colossal being on a throne. He came across a heavy-horned beastman, and the danger level is unidentified, but Joey is still confident. Unfortunately, he can't see the level, even from so far away. He feels the terrible pressure of that monster. Could that be the boss of the secret realms? The monster starts talking to him. Insolent human, was it you who slaughtered my relatives? Joey is shocked now. Another monster that can talk? Huh? What, your relatives? That means that heavy, horned beast from the abyss was actually related to that monster. Does he have a society like humans now? Suddenly, that monster gets up and makes a huge leap towards Joey, ready to impale him with his spear. The blow is so strong and powerful that it burst all over the ground, turning everything into lava. Damn, what a strong monster. But the monster notices that Joe managed to dodge. He finds it all very strange, but Joey only managed to dodge because he managed to use the giant arm of Cobra and Monkey ability. The monster keeps saying that the connection with that world hasn't even been opened yet. How could a human enter? But Joey realizes that the monster is trying to connect that world with the secret realm of Earth. That monster doesn't want to think too much, so he'll let Joey talk. He casts a piercing look at Joey, and before Joe could realize it, he already has the spear stuck in his chest. The impact is so strong that it drags Joey hundreds of meters, stopping only at a rock. After breaking that rock almost to the end, he is thrown with such force again against the rock, opening a hole in his chest. That hole is finally closed by the immortal ability, while the monster observes. The speed of his recovery is impressive. Is he one of us? The monster points his spear and says that maybe Joey will be his experiment. He will cut him open completely so he can study him. A monster determined to impale the spear on him again, while Joey activates his dynamic vision, target perception at enhanced high speed. The lance is coming closer and closer in slow motion, while Joey observes that monster has terrifying strength, but his attacks grabbed him with both hands and broke his body and are simple. And in the following moments, Joey manages to escape that blow. While the monster is sticking his spear in the ground, Joe is on the monster's back, thinking that fighting up close will give him the advantage. He imbues his hand with corrosive slime, while thinking about taking some of that monster's characteristics. But unfortunately, Joey didn't foresee that the monster's tail is extremely strong and manages to hit him. The monster sticks his spear in the ground and says that that thing is a pain to use. He still prefers punching and smashing things. Then he jumps towards Joey and starts punching him with tremendous force and brutality several times in a row, forming a huge cloud of dust all over the place. After he's finished, there's Joey, stuck in the ground with such brutality, completely out of breath. Poor Joey, he's all broken. Will he be able to survive? The monster observes that he's still alive, while Joey thinks that thanks to his elastic muscles, he managed to absorb most of the damage. The monster then picks up his spear and, imbued with hellfire, decides to finish Joey off. After all, he's getting bored, and now he's going to give the last blow, the final blow. But Joey defends that blow using the hardened skin ability and the dorsal armor resistance of the heavy-horned beast. The monster then decides to give him more blows. Joey manages to defend them all. He jumps further away, and the roach god appears while Joey continues defending. It seems his hardened skin is melting with the flames, but he can still use the twin secret realm to buy time, while Joey is determined not to lose this fight. The monster gives a strong blow. He dodges and advances from behind, finding an opening. He activates the arms of the giant cobra monkey, but the monster is smarter. He spins his spear, throwing Joey away, and he hits again against an extremely strong rock, breaking it into shards. The monster now starts gathering lava and starts conjuring a spell. Lava jet explosion, and launches all that lava towards Joey in one go. Joey can't believe that that monster has that kind of ability. He manages to jump away, but that lava is guided towards him again. He uses some trees that are there to try to escape. Unfortunately, one of the lavas hits his leg, but unlike ordinary lava, that lava looks like a bullet and pierces his thigh. Unfortunately, Joey can't dodge everything, but his recovery ability is activated, but it doesn't seem to be working as it should, because that thing still has a bleeding effect and is burning. The monster keeps calling him an insolent human and launches more lava towards Joey, saying that he's going to melt him with the flames of hell until he turns into nothing, not even dust. Joey is now surrounded by the flames, and while shouting that he's going to take him with him, he activates the heavy-horned beast characteristic again and manages to defend part of the monster's blow. He keeps running, and the monster keeps controlling all the flames towards Joey. When he gets closer, Joe shouts that he's got that monster now. Then he makes a jump and gives a blow right in the middle of the monster's horn, managing to break a part of his horn. But the monster is standing still, doing nothing. Then Joey realizes that the monster hasn't even moved. The monster grabs his arm and raises his spear again, imbued with fire, and starts to scorch Joey. Joey is totally consumed by the flames and shouts in the middle of that torment of flames and falls to the ground, scorched. The roach god appears, saying with kind words that that monster isn't a type of monster that he can defeat with the power he has now. Unfortunately, he can't see Joey throwing his life away like that, and he starts activating the power of the secret realm to open the emergency escape portal. But quickly, Joey slaps that crystal and starts absorbing the power, while the roach god can't believe what that guy is doing. Joey looks at him, saying that he's made peace with death a long time ago. The roach god is in disbelief. While Joey absorbs all the power of that crystal, the power runs through every inch of his body, and he starts to shine, radiating an intense light. Suddenly, an explosion, and the monster can't understand anything that's going on. What's happening? What gigantic power is this? Suddenly, the system warns that he didn't escape certain death. He passed the roach god's second test, and now his fighter form has been unlocked, and he causes a huge explosion in the whole area. Now I understand why during a transformation, other people don't intervene. It's because of the fear of what's happening. Suddenly, we see a hand, and there he is, Joey, completely transformed into a body with chitin. A new power is emerging from his body. What exactly is this fighter form? But the roach god says that fighter form is a state that allows his characteristics to evolve freely. For example, the monster is there, about to give him a blow. The monster just says, lava, lava explosion. Suddenly, the whole place explodes in an overwhelming pressure, turning the place into rubble. In the middle of the smoke, there he is, Joey, thinking that that armor there is formidable, while the roach god says that that cockroach shell, elastic skin, mutant frog, and the hardened skin of the heavy-horned jungle beast as he gains new characteristics. Later, he can continue improving his abilities and his skin. He observes his body and understands that that lava flow barely scratched him. That biological armor is solid, completely different from everything he has ever seen. The monster observes the smoke, while thinking that no matter the evolution he's had now, he'll never have survived that hail of lava. Suddenly, he only sees the punch coming from inside the smoke and opens his eyes thinking, what's that? That punch hits head-on. Joey manages to attack from afar using his elastic muscles. That's the long-range Cobra Monkey Fist. In that fighter form, he can activate several characteristics at the same time and chain them into a combo ability. And there's also no cooldown time between characteristic changes. Now he has the ability to combine everything in attacks completely different from what the enemies expect. The roach god keeps saying that in fighter form, his resistance and agility increase tenfold. While he's all amazing. The monster is lying on the ground and he's standing. The monster gets up, observing that Joey doesn't have any scratches. Now he's disappointed. He's not believing this. He jumps towards Joey, telling Joey not to underestimate him. Joey gives a look and activates dynamic vision, elastic muscles, and the mantis scythe blade in a combined combo and manages to defend all of the monster's attacks extremely calmly. Suddenly, he manages to disarm the monster, while the monster keeps trying to understand what's happening. It seems he's losing. Joey now activates an ability in his leg and gives a nice kick to the monster, throwing him upwards with tremendous force. Now he decides to use his elastic fingers and trap each member of that monster in the air. Suddenly, he manages to pull that monster down with tremendous speed, bursting all the ground there below. But the monster won't give up so easily. He slams his hand on the ground and shouts, no! He throws a punch and goes towards Joey. He punches with punch, a huge bang in the whole area. Damn, it's over here. Unfortunately, we don't have any more chapters of this story. As soon as we do, if this video does well, we'll bring the continuation because the curiosity and anxiety are hitting hard. It ended at the best part, man. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned for the next video.